This is the reading response of a short extract from Friedrich Schleiermacher's Hermeneutics and Criticism. Schleiermacher's thoughts on hermeneutics can be found in his lecture notes, which were edited by his friend based on his handwritten manuscripts after he died. However, to the uninitiated, including this reviewer, Schleiermacher's writings often appear as opaque and difficult. Readers of the extract should be mindful of the following. Number 1. There is a complex textual history of the manuscript. Number 2. The text in front of us is a translation and may have difficulties to convey the nuance of the original theological German. Number 3. They are lecture notes prepared by Schleiermacher intended for his students, and this is different from a polished prose prepared for general readership. Let's look a bit about the format. The lecture notes are organized as a set of principles, or you may call them statements or theses. These principles are numbered and italicized. Under each principle, there are often several passages, and most of them are numbered to explain and elaborate those principles. The extract covers only principle 1 to 11. For example, Principle 1 here states hermeneutics as the art of understanding does not yet exist in a general manner. There are instead only several forms of specific hermeneutics. Then following this principle, there are 3 numbered paragraphs providing more detailed explanatory notes to the principle. The 11 principles of the extract cover a range of topics. They include the definition of hermeneutics and its relationship with other disciplines, principles 1 and 2. The distinction between speaking and understanding, principles 3 and 4. The role of language and author in interpretation and understanding, principle 5. The distinction between the grammatical and psychological interpretation, principles 6 to 8. And the critical success factors of explication, principles 9 to 11. Schleiermacher claims that hermeneutics as the art of understanding does not yet exist in a general manner, principle 1, and it is difficult to situate general hermeneutics, principle 2. These are scene-setting statements, which Schleiermacher would elaborate and explain in subsequent texts. According to him, in the realm of understanding, misunderstanding is the norm and understanding the exception. The aim of interpretation is to understand the thought content of the utterance that the author attempts to convey through language, principle 5. The objective of interpretation, according to Schleiermacher, is that the interpreter can understand the utterance at first just as well and then better than its author. Schleiermacher identifies 2 types of interpretations, grammatical and psychological, principle 6. The focus of grammatical interpretation is the relationship between the text and the development of a language in general. Whereas the focus of psychological interpretation is the relationship between the text and the development of the author. He maintains both are equally important, principle 7 and 8. In the following 3 principles, 9 to 11, Schleiermacher further elaborates the important role of language and people in interpretation. He first claimed explication is an art, and no rules can be given for how this is done. He then proceeds to argue that the success of interpretation as an art form depends on the talent for language, that is the grammatical aspect, and knowledge of individual people, that is the psychological aspect. This extract covers only the first 11 principles of Schleiermacher's hermeneutics and criticism, and hence they represent only a small sample of his thoughts on the topic of hermeneutics. Nonetheless, it is still possible to discern several important contributions of Schleiermacher's to modern theological hermeneutics. First, even a casual perusal of the extract would demonstrate Schleiermacher is making a serious attempt to develop hermeneutics into a formal discipline of study. Each of the principles and its accompanying arguments reflect careful and thoughtful consideration. It is therefore not surprising for Schleiermacher to be recognized as the father of modern hermeneutics. Second, by emphasizing both the psychological as well as grammatical aspects of interpretation, Schleiermacher demonstrates that the thoughts that the author wants to communicate is just as important and relevant as the reliable transmission of facts. Now, this frees the interpreter from a narrow and literal interpretation of the text and enables the interpreter to acknowledge the historical unreliability of the text and still at the same time accepts its authority. Third, the circular nature of hermeneutics is an important concept in Schleiermacher's writings. The hermeneutical circle suggests that the parts can only be understood from an understanding of the whole, but that the whole can only be understood from an understanding of the parts. For instance, an individual text can only be understood within the context of the complete work and life of the author, and the author's work can be understood within the entire literary corpus written in this language ad infinitum. Although this concept is not articulated until later, that is, in Principle 20, Schleiermacher already has alluded to this idea in the extract. The contribution of Schleiermacher to modern theological hermeneutics is certainly not in doubt, and it would be inappropriate to critique his approach based on a very small sample of his writings. Nonetheless, there are issues raised in the extract that remain unclear to this reviewer, and these are reflected in the following questions. I have proposed the following questions to follow up. Number 1. A challenge to understand Schleiermacher's writing is the lack of consistency and definition in the use of terms. Some examples in the extract include art, grammatical and psychological, and explication. The terms in question are italicized. Select one or more of these examples and try to come up with a precise definition of those terms. But feel free to provide your own examples. Number 2. Schleiermacher asserts that the aim of interpretation is to understand the author initially just as well and then better than the author. How can this be possible? Discuss. And if time permitting, a follow-up of the follow-up question. Under this paradigm, that is, the interpreter can understand the text better than the author, do you think that objectivity can be maintained? Thank you.